The way open source works is that everybody gets to see what happens. Failure is acceptable, fast turnaround times are good, and you expect that whenever you change something in a complex system, things will emerge that you didn't anticipate. Politics seems to be wedded to the idea that you should stand up, make a grand announcement, and it should be a big new project, and that's what the press report on. You know, it's not just the politicians; they're being driven by external systems to them, the press, the way the voters interact through the press. And so they want to create big splashes, which is the worst possible way of creating complex software systems. So it's not, open source is only a tiny part of what they need. I mean, in business, people who looked at it reckon that, for example, changing your software system is 10% of the gain you can make in your IT quality. The other 90% comes through things like training, particularly changing internal processes and culture.
I suppose the way that open source works is that people with specific interest and knowledge
care about particular areas.
Are going to be the ones who update that particular element.
There are chunks of the kernel that people work on where essentially almost nobody else cares. And it works reasonably well in the kernel community because it doesn't affect everybody else. Or at least if it does affect everybody else, then the point where everybody stops caring. I'm not sure the same is true when you scale it up to UK-wide or Europe-wide government. There are some things where people do get very heavily involved. Software patents was one. There were like 300,000 signatures on the petition to the European Union. But a lot of day-to-day running the country stuff, the people essentially would prefer to delegate to the people who do it. What we have to have is a scheme where when people do start to care about it, or something everyone has said, oh, this won't interest the people, and people actually say, well, actually, we do all care about this. There is accountability.
And do you think this change in the distribution of information is resulting in a change in the distribution of power?
Not a great deal yet. I think it will. I mean, I think the kind of people who are benefiting most significantly from this kind of information now are so far down the food chain, so to speak, that their influence on kind of power on the world is very, very small and will remain very small for a long time. But it does mean we are kind of sowing some of the seeds, so to speak, for a better world in the future, maybe 2 generations on. I mean, there's things like the One Laptop Per Child project, for example, of trying to change education is a great example. Not just of the use of sort of free software to keep costs down, but also the idea that information effectively can be transmitted and stored for free. So you can give every child in the third world a library, because it's just a compact disk. You can ship it now. We have the technology to do this. So we can share all the knowledge around the world, which is what these people need in order to lift themselves out of poverty.